I stood frozen outside the glass conference room, watching my boss Nathan finalize the sale of my logistics system to MegaTech Industries for $955 million. My stomach churned as he noticed me and walked over, opening the door just enough to whisper, "This is above your pay grade," he smirked, before shutting it in my face. 3 years of my life, my innovation, my solution that revolutionized supply chain management, all being sold without my name attached. Little did he know I had been preparing for this betrayal. My 5-year-old patent application was about to change everything. I never planned to be an inventor. 5 years ago, I was just a logistics specialist at Tech Forward Solutions, a mid-sized company struggling to compete with industry giants. My days consisted of tracking shipments, managing inventory databases, and trying to untangle the constant supply chain bottlenecks that cost our clients millions. After my divorce from Alan, I threw myself into work. It was easier than facing an empty apartment each night. My sister Jackie had just been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and between hospital visits and work, I barely had time to breathe, let alone process my failed marriage. It was during one of those late nights, fueled by vending machine coffee and desperation, that I spotted the pattern. All our logistics software was built on outdated models that treated each point in the supply chain as an isolated event. But what if we connected everything? Not just tracking products, but predicting disruptions before they happened. What if an algorithm could learn from past errors and adjust in real time? I started coding after hours, building a prototype on my personal laptop. The algorithm was crude at first, but even in its infancy, it reduced error rates by 17% in simulations. When I first approached my direct supervisor, Lisa Winters, she dismissed it as impractical. "Focus on your assigned tasks, Sophia," she said with a tight smile. But I couldn't let it go. I refined my approach and aimed higher, requesting 5 minutes with our department head, Nathan Parker. Nathan was everything. I wasn't polished, confident, with an MBA from Wharton and connections throughout the industry. At first, he barely looked at me during our meeting, checking emails while I nervously explained my concept. "So you think you've solved a problem that has stumped logistics experts for decades?" he asked, finally looking up from his screen. "I think I found a new approach," I replied, sliding over my tablet with the simulation results. That got his attention. He asked pointed questions, challenging my assumptions. I stood my ground explaining the mathematics behind my algorithm. By the end of our meeting, something had changed in his demeanor. "Let me think about this," he said, keeping my presentation materials. 2 weeks later, Nathan called me into his office. "I pitched your concept to the executive team," he said. "They approved a small budget for development. You'll have 6 months to prove it can work in real-world applications." I nearly hugged him. Finally, someone saw the potential. "Thank you for taking a chance on me," I said. "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "You'll be doing this on top of your regular duties. And if it fails, it's on you." For the next 3 years, my life became all about the system. I named it Atlas Adaptive Transport Logistics Algorithmic System. I worked 14-hour days, coming in early and staying late. My apartment became a place I visited only to shower and occasionally sleep. Friends stopped inviting me to events I never had time for anyway. Jackie recovered, thankfully, but commented that I looked worse than she had during chemotherapy. "You're going to burn out," she warned during one of our rare dinners together. "Just a little longer," I promised. This could change everything, and it was working. Atlas grew more sophisticated with each iteration. It learned from every shipment, every delay, every unexpected weather pattern or supplier issue. When we implemented the beta version on a small client account, their delivery accuracy jumped by 31%. Supply chain costs dropped by 22%. It wasn't just an improvement, it was a revolution. Nathan became my biggest champion, securing additional resources when I needed them. He didn't understand the technical details, but he grasped the commercial implications immediately. "You're building something that could transform this company," he told me, bringing coffee to my desk one evening when everyone else had gone home. "I knew you had potential the moment you walked into my office." His validation meant everything. After years of being overlooked, I finally felt seen. When the full implementation saved our largest client millions in its first quarter, I expected recognition, perhaps a promotion, or at least formal acknowledgement of my creation. Instead, I received a standard performance bonus and a brief mention in the company newsletter, which referred to Atlas as a project spearheaded by the supply chain innovation team under Nathan Parker's leadership. I told myself it was fine. That's how corporations worked. I was part of a team, after all. But then came the day I accidentally received an email meant for the executive board. The subject line read, "Atlas System Valuation and Market Strategy." The attached presentation contained slides about Atlas's market potential, with my name nowhere to be found. Every slide credited Nathan as the primary architect and visionary behind the breakthrough algorithm. My hands shook as I scrolled through page after page of my work, my ideas, my sleepless nights, all attributed to Nathan. And there, on the final slide, was the bombshell. Preliminary interest from MegaTech Industries values Atlas at $200 to $300 million. I felt sick. I printed the presentation and stormed toward Nathan's office, only to find him in a meeting with unfamiliar executives in expensive suits. Through the glass walls, I saw my system demonstrations playing on the conference room screen. Nathan spotted me, excused himself, and stepped outside. "Is there something urgent, Sophia?" he asked pleasantly. "I need to speak with you about Atlas," I said, clutching the printout. His eyes flickered to the papers in my hand, then back to my face. His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Not a good time. We'll talk tomorrow." As he turned to go back into the meeting, I noticed a document on the table inside. Even from a distance, I could read the letterhead, MegaTech Industries. The next day, when I arrived at work, my security badge no longer opened the door to the development lab where all my Atlas work was stored. "I need to talk to you about the Atlas presentation," I said, standing in Nathan's office doorway the next morning. He barely glanced up from his computer. Closed the door. As I sat across from him, he leaned back in his chair. "I saw you received that email by mistake. IT is looking into how that happened. That's what you're concerned about? Not the fact that you're taking credit for my work?" My voice shook despite my efforts to remain composed. Nathan's expression hardened. "Your work? Sophia, let's be clear. You contributed to a company project while employed by this company, using company resources. Atlas belongs to Tech Forward. I know the company owns the intellectual property. That's not what I'm talking about. You're presenting yourself as the creator. You called yourself the primary architect and visionary behind the algorithm." He had the audacity to chuckle. "That's just marketing language. No one builds something like this alone. You wrote some code, yes, but the concept, the business application, securing executive buy-in, that was all me." "Some code?" I echoed in disbelief. "Nathan, I conceived this entire system. the adaptive learning architecture, the predictive modeling, the integration framework, all of it. With a team of developers supporting you, using the company's infrastructure, following strategic direction from leadership, he countered smoothly. Your contribution was valuable, Sophia, and that's why you received your bonus. But don't overstate your role. I stared at him. This man I'd respected, even admired. Why can't I access the development lab anymore? The project has moved to the commercialization phase. Your technical skills are needed elsewhere now. He glanced at his watch. I have a meeting. We can discuss your next assignment later this week. I left his office in a daze. This couldn't be happening. 3 years of my life, countless nights and weekends, innovations that came to me in the shower, during my commute, even in my dreams, all being stripped away. I went to HR, hoping to find an ally in Judy Franklin. We'd chatted at company events, and she'd always seemed supportive of women in technical roles. Judy, do you have a minute? I asked, poking my head into her office. Sophia, come in. How are you? Her smile seemed genuine as she gestured to the chair across from her desk. I explained the situation, showing her the printout of Nathan's presentation. There's nothing in here acknowledging my role as the inventor, I concluded. Is there something HR can do? Some policy about proper attribution? Her expression shifted subtly as I spoke. By the time I finished, her smile had transformed into something more guarded, professional. First, I should mention that sharing confidential executive documents is against company policy, she said quietly. That's what concerns you? Not the fact that Nathan is claiming credit for something he didn't create? Judy sighed, folding her hands on her desk. Sophia, I understand you feel strongly about your contribution to Atlas, but I've reviewed the project documentation, and Nathan is listed as the project lead on every official filing. Your role is documented as senior developer because he changed the documentation. I was the project originator. Everyone on the team knows that. These allegations are very serious, Judy said, her tone cooling further. Nathan Parker has an exemplary record with this company. He's brought in millions in new business. So that makes it okay for him to steal someone else's work? I'd be careful about making accusations of theft, she warned. The company has clear intellectual property policies that all employees sign. Everything created here belongs to Tech Forward. I left HR feeling worse than before. Not only was Judy not helping, but she seemed to be warning me against pursuing this further. Over the next few days, I noticed colleagues avoiding me. Conversations would stop when I approached the break room. People who once sought my technical advice suddenly had urgent meetings when I needed to consult with them. Then came the morning when Lisa, my direct supervisor, assigned me to help with data migration for a minor client, essentially downgrading me from system architect to data entry. This is a joke, right? I asked her. It's a priority project, she replied, not meeting my eyes. Lisa, you know what I built. Why is everyone pretending Atlas wasn't my creation? She glanced around nervously before lowering her voice. Sophia, drop it. Nathan has the ear of the CEO. Everyone knows you're brilliant, but no one's going to risk their career by contradicting the official narrative. After she left, I sat at my desk, staring at my screen. Had I been naive to think my work would speak for itself? That merit alone would ensure fair treatment? Psst, the sound came from the neighboring cubicle. Jake Williams, an IT specialist who maintained our development environments, peered over the partition. Meet me in the server room in 10 minutes. Use the back stairwell. The server room was chilly and humming with equipment. Jake closed the door behind us, checking twice to make sure it was secure. "You should know what's happening," he said, pulling out his tablet. "I've been monitoring system access logs because of some security concerns. Look at this." He showed me a series of file operations, copies, moves, edits, all involving Atlas project documentation. The user performing these actions? Nathan Parker. "He's been systematically removing your digital footprint from the project," Jake explained, "replacing original authorship metadata, editing code comments, even altering meeting minutes to downplay your contributions." I felt sick. "Why show me this? You could get fired." "Because it's wrong," Jake said simply. "I've been here 15 years, never seen anything like this. But," he hesitated, "there's something else." He pulled up another screen, showing a version comparison of my final code submission. Subtle changes had been introduced, not enough to break functionality, but enough to make the code less elegant, less innovative. "He's making your work look mediocre," Jake explained, "while keeping the core algorithms intact. My guess? In case you ever claim ownership, he can point to these flaws as evidence that the real innovation happened after your involvement ended." I stared at the screen, watching as my beautiful, efficient code was deliberately sabotaged while preserving just enough to make it valuable. "There's more," Jake continued, his voice dropping even lower. "The MegaTech deal? It's bigger than anyone knows. I helped set up the secure data room for due diligence last week. They're not talking 200 or 300 million. The latest valuation puts Atlas at close to $1 billion. 955 million to be exact. That was the number I would later see on the final term sheet. "Why would Nathan do this?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "Executive compensation package includes a percentage of major asset sales," Jake replied. "Plus, word is MegaTech wants the visionary behind Atlas to join their leadership team with a significant equity stake." As we left the server rooms separately to avoid suspicion, the full weight of the betrayal crashed down on me. Nathan wasn't just stealing credit. He was erasing me entirely to claim a fortune that my mind, my innovation, my sacrifice had created. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every scenario I played out ended with me losing. Nathan had the company, the documentation, and apparently HR on his side. What could one developer do against an entire corporate machine determined to protect its interests? The answer came in a memory of my grandfather, tinkering in his garage workshop, saying words I hadn't thought about in years. "Ideas are like children, Sophia. Bringing them into the world is just the beginning. You have to protect them too." My grandfather Joseph was a brilliant man who died believing he was a failure. He created a revolutionary carburetor design in the 60s that improved fuel efficiency by 30%. A major auto parts manufacturer expressed interest, reviewed his prototype, then suddenly went silent. 6 months later, they released a suspiciously similar product. Without documentation proving his earlier design, my grandfather couldn't afford the legal battle to claim what was rightfully his. "Always protect your ideas before sharing them," he'd told me, showing me his subsequent inventions meticulously documented in bound notebooks, pages signed and dated by a notary public. "The world takes advantage of creators who don't know business." Those words echoed in my mind as I stared at my ceiling at 3 a.m, another sleepless night stretching endlessly. My health was deteriorating rapidly. I'd lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. Dark circles had become a permanent feature under my eyes. Jackie had started bringing groceries to my apartment, worried I wasn't eating. "This company isn't worth your health," she insisted, watching me pick at the pasta she'd made. But it wasn't about the company anymore. It was about justice. about not letting Nathan Parker do to me what that auto parts manufacturer had done to my grandfather. What Nathan didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd taken my grandfather's lesson to heart from the very beginning. When I first conceived Atlas, I started keeping detailed records. Every brainstorming session, every algorithm iteration, every breakthrough was documented in notebooks with dated entries, many signed by a notary friend. I had emails, early code repositories on my personal cloud account, and even recorded voice notes describing my thought process. I had done this out of habit, never truly expecting to need these records. Now they were potentially my only leverage. While maintaining my new low-profile role at work, I began researching patent law during nights and weekends. Most of what I found was discouraging. Corporate intellectual property cases typically favored employers. The standard employment contract I'd signed gave tech-forward ownership of anything I created within the scope of employment. But there were nuances, exceptions, gray areas. I needed professional guidance, but attorneys specialized in intellectual property litigation charged hundreds of dollars per hour, money I didn't have after draining my savings to help with Jackie's medical bills. I cold-called 23 patent attorneys before finding one willing to hear me out for a reduced consultation fee. Andrea Harper had made her reputation representing independent inventors against corporate giants. Her office was modest, but the walls displayed framed patent certificates and newspaper headlines about her victories. "You have 30 minutes, she said when I sat down, not looking up from my file. "Standard employment contract says everything you created belongs to your employer. Why should I take your case?" I outlined my situation, emphasizing my documentation process and the systematic way Nathan had removed evidence of my contributions. Andrea finally looked up, studying me with sharp, gray eyes. "Do you have proof the core algorithm was conceived on your own time, before company resources were involved?" "Yes. My original notebook entries predate any company involvement by 6 months. And you can demonstrate independent creation without company tools or data?" I built the initial prototype using publicly available logistics datasets. The code was written on my personal laptop outside of work hours. She leaned back, tapping her pen against her desk. "Even with that, you're facing an uphill battle. These cases typically take years and cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Do you have financial resources for that fight?" My heart sank. "No, but I can't just walk away." Andrea sighed. "Look, I sympathize with your situation. I've seen it too often, but I need to be honest. Your chances of success are slim, especially against a company with deep pockets." As I gathered my notes, fighting back tears of frustration, the office door opened. A lanky young man with rumpled clothes and intense eyes entered, carrying a stack of files. He glanced at me, then at the documentation spread across Andrea's desk. "Is this the Atlas algorithm case?" he asked, setting down his files. Andrea looked annoyed at the interruption. "Theo, we're in a meeting." "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "But if this is about the adaptive logistics system that recalibrates based on multivariable inputs, I've been following similar technologies." I stared at him in surprise. "You know about Atlas?" "Not specifically, but the patent applications in this space. I've been tracking emerging logistics technologies for another client." He turned to Andrea. "Can I sit in?" After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Sophia Matthews, this is Theo Lewis, an associate at the firm. Brilliant legal mind, questionable social skills." Theo ignored the jab, focusing entirely on my documentation. He asked precise, technical questions that demonstrated a surprisingly deep understanding of algorithmic design. Unlike Andrea, who'd focused on standard legal approaches, Theo seemed to be searching for unconventional angles. "The core innovation isn't the overall system," he said after 30 minutes of detailed discussion. "It's the self-learning correction protocol embedded within it. That's where you might have a patentable claim separate from the company's ownership of the complete system." Andrea looked skeptical. "Even if that's true, it's a long shot." "Most breakthroughs start as long shots," Theo replied. He turned to me. "I think there's a potential strategy here, but it would require immediate action and absolute discretion." Andrea studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Theo, can you step outside? I need a word with Miss Matthews." When he left, Andrea leaned forward. "Theo is 29 years old and probably the most unconventional attorney I've ever met. He's on the spectrum, struggles with office politics, and has turned down lucrative offers from top firms because he wants to, quote, protect inventors from vultures. He's also developed some innovative approaches to patent protection that have surprised everyone, including me." "You don't sound convinced this will work," I observed. "I'm not. But Theo sees patterns others miss. If anyone can find a viable strategy for your situation, it's him." She hesitated. "We typically work on contingency for cases we're confident about. I can't offer that here. But if you're willing to work primarily with Theo at a reduced rate, I'll supervise. It would still strain my finances to the breaking point, but what choice did I have?" When Theo returned, he carried a legal pad covered in diagrams and notes. "Here's my thought. We can't undo the company's ownership of Atlas as a complete system, but we can potentially secure your rights to the core innovation methodology through a narrow, precisely worded patent application." He outlined a strategy focused not on ownership of the entire Atlas platform, but on the unique algorithmic approach I had developed. If successful, it wouldn't give me back Atlas, but it would establish me as the inventor of its most valuable component, which any company implementing the system would need a license to use. As I left the law office that day, I felt the first flicker of hope in weeks. It was a narrow path forward, but at least it was a path. That hope was tested the very next day when I overheard two executives discussing the MegaTech deal in the break room. They quickly went silent when they noticed me, but not before I caught a critical detail. The negotiations were accelerating. MegaTech was pushing to close within 30 days, far faster than the standard acquisition timeline. Through company gossip and carefully placed questions, I pieced together why MegaTech was willing to pay such an astronomical sum for Atlas. Their competitors had recently unveiled a similar system, threatening MegaTech's market dominance. Atlas wasn't just valuable technology to them, it was a competitive necessity worth nearly $1 billion. And Nathan Parker was about to become wealthy, beyond imagination from my work, unless I could implement Theo's strategy in time. "We need to move fast," Theo said during our next meeting, spreading documents across his cluttered desk. "Patent applications take time, but we can file a provisional application immediately to establish priority date." We began working nights and weekends to prepare the necessary documentation. Theo absorbed technical details with remarkable speed, asking insightful questions that helped clarify the truly novel aspects of my work. "The beauty of your algorithm isn't just what it does, but how efficiently it does it," he noted one evening, reviewing my original design documents. "This adaptive learning feature is unlike anything in existing patents." My documentation proved invaluable. The notebooks where I'd recorded my thought process, the early code iterations saved to my personal cloud account, The email threads with colleagues asking technical questions that revealed my role as the system's architect all created a paper trail that established me as Atlas's true creator. But we had to be careful. If Nathan or Tech Forward discovered what I was doing, they could accelerate the MegaTech deal or take legal action to block my patent application. I nearly gave myself away when Nathan caught me researching patent law on my work laptop during lunch. "Interesting reading," he remarked, appearing suddenly behind me. "Planning an invention?" I closed the browser quickly. "Just curious." "My grandfather was an inventor." Nathan studied me for a moment. "You know, Sophia, things would go more smoothly if you embraced your new role. Fighting the current only leads to drowning." The thinly veiled threat hung between us. I forced a neutral expression. "I'm just doing my assigned work, Nathan." "Good. Keep it that way." He walked away, but I could feel his suspicion lingering. After that, I was more cautious. I used public Wi-Fi at libraries for research and communicated with Theo using a separate email account on my personal phone. The patent process consumed my savings. Even with Theo's reduced rates, legal fees quickly depleted my bank account. I sold my car and moved to a cheaper apartment, cutting every possible expense. Through it all, the emotional toll continued to mount. Friends couldn't understand why I was working myself to exhaustion on a legal battle when I could just find another job. They didn't understand that this wasn't just about money or credit. It was about not letting someone steal years of my life, my creativity, my intellectual legacy. Only Jackie and Theo truly seemed to understand what was driving me. My senior year of law school, I developed an algorithm that predicted judicial decisions with 63% accuracy, Theo shared one evening as we worked late. My professor took it, refined it with his team, and published it in a major legal journal. My name appeared in a footnote as a research assistant. He got tenure. I got a letter of recommendation. "Why didn't you fight it?" I asked. I had no documentation, no proof of my original work, just my word against his. He looked at me with unexpected intensity. "That's why I became a patent attorney. That's why your case matters to me." Our connection deepened as we worked together. Theo wasn't conventionally charming. He was direct to the point of bluntness, often missed social cues, and could talk for hours about patent classifications. But his passion for protecting inventors and his unwavering belief in my case became a lifeline when my confidence faltered. The patent strategy was complex. We couldn't claim the entire Atlas system, as Tech Forward had legitimate ownership claims to many aspects. Instead, we focused on the core innovation, what Theo called the inventive heart of the system. Most logistics algorithms are static, they follow fixed rules, Theo explained to Andrea during a strategy meeting. Sophia's innovation is a dynamic learning protocol that evolves based on outcomes. That's the breakthrough we're patenting. We filed the provisional patent application 6 weeks after our first meeting. It established my priority date, the official moment I claimed the invention, which would be crucial if disputes arose later. But a provisional application was just the first step. We still needed to complete the full patent application, a far more detailed and technical document. Meanwhile, the MegaTech acquisition continued advancing. Jake, still my inside source, kept me updated on developments. "They're doing technical due diligence this week," he reported during one of our clandestine meetings. "Nathan's leading the demos personally, taking credit for architectural decisions you made." Each new revelation stoked my determination, but time was running out. Through Jake, I learned that final contract negotiations were underway. MegaTech had completed technical review and was satisfied with Atlas's capabilities. Only legal and financial details remained. Then came the bombshell that nearly broke me. Nathan convinced the CEO you're a liability, Jake told me, his face grim. They're planning to terminate you immediately after the deal closes. Nathan's painting you as unstable, saying you've made delusional claims about creating Atlas. They're preparing to have you escorted out by security. I felt physically ill. They're going to fire me and portray me as mentally unstable to discredit any claims I might make. That's the plan, Jake confirmed. And there's more. Nathan's been telling the executive team that you've become obsessed with him personally, suggesting there's a romantic rejection angle to your claims. It's disgusting, but some people are buying it. The injustice was staggering. Not only was Nathan stealing my work and planning to fire me, but he was also attacking my mental stability and fabricating a rejected romantic interest narrative to undermine my credibility. That night, I called Theo in tears. I don't know if I can keep fighting. They're not just taking my work, they're trying to destroy me personally. This actually helps our case, Theo said, after listening to everything. These actions suggest consciousness of guilt. They wouldn't go to such lengths to discredit you if your claims had no merit. That's cold comfort if I lose my job and reputation next week. Then we accelerate our timeline, he said firmly. We file the complete patent application immediately and prepare to notify MegaTech of potential licensing requirements. Will that be enough to stop the deal? Maybe not stop it, but certainly complicate it. No acquirer wants unexpected intellectual property disputes. We worked around the clock for the next 3 days, finalizing the patent application with every technical detail we could document. Theo's usual methodical approach gave way to an urgent pace I hadn't seen before. Most attorneys would say we're rushing this, he admitted as we reviewed the final draft. But sometimes perfect is the enemy of done. We need this filed before the MegaTech deal closes. As we submitted the application, I felt a strange mix of terror and relief. The die was cast. I had committed to this path, investing my time, money, and reputation in a high-stakes gamble against a powerful opponent. But, for the first time in months, I slept through the night. Whatever happened next, I had fought back. My grandfather would have been proud. The next morning, Jake sent me an urgent text. Deal closing meeting scheduled for Friday. 3 days from now. We had filed just in time. Now came the most dangerous part of our strategy. The summons to Human Resources came Thursday morning, 1 day before the MegaTech closing. Judy Franklin's smile was professionally sympathetic as I took a seat in her office. Sophia, I've called you in today to discuss the conclusion of your employment with Tech Forward Solutions, she began, sliding a document across her desk. This separation agreement includes 4 months' severance, contingent upon signing a comprehensive confidentiality and non-disparagement clause. Beside her sat Lucas Bartley from Legal, his expression carefully neutral. "You're firing me?" I asked, though I had expected this moment. "We're eliminating your position as part of a departmental restructuring," Judy replied smoothly. "Your contributions have been valued, but the company is moving in a different direction." I glanced at the agreement. In addition to standard termination language, it contained extensive intellectual property provisions requiring me to acknowledge that I had no claims to any company technology, specifically mentioning Atlas by name. "Page 4 is particularly important," Lucas interjected. "It confirms your understanding that all work performed during your employment belongs exclusively to Tech Forward, and you waive any claims of authorship or ownership." "What if I don't sign?" I asked. "Severance would be withdrawn," Judy replied. and the company would need to evaluate whether further action is necessary to protect its intellectual property. The threat was unmistakable. "I'd like to review this with my attorney before signing," I said, gathering my composure. Lucas's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your attorney?" "Yes. Standard practice when reviewing legal documents, isn't it?" Judy and Lucas exchanged glances. "We'll need your decision by end of day," Judy stated. "Company policy requires immediate return of all company property. Your email access has already been disabled, and security will escort you to collect personal items from your desk." 20 minutes later, I stood on the sidewalk outside Tech Forward headquarters, holding a small box containing my desk plants, family photos, and 5 years of professional life. My security badge had been deactivated, my company laptop confiscated, my access to all Atlas documentation gone. In a daze, I walked 6 blocks before finding a bench in a small park. The spring sunshine felt mockingly cheerful as my career imploded. I called Theo. "They fired me," I said when he answered. "Effective immediately. They want me to sign away all claims to Atlas by the end of today." "Don't sign anything," he responded instantly. "Come to the office. We need to adjust our strategy." When I arrived, Andrea had joined Theo in the conference room. Their expressions confirmed the severity of my situation. "Without access to company systems, we've lost our inside view of the deal timeline," Andrea said. "And any additional documentation that might have strengthened our case," Theo added. I set my box of belongings on the conference table. "So it's over? Nathan wins?" Andrea and Theo exchanged looks. "Not necessarily," Theo said carefully. "But our options have narrowed." They outlined the remaining path. We had filed the patent application. If approved, it would establish my invention of the core technology. But patent approval took months or years, far too late to affect the MegaTech acquisition. "I've lost everything for nothing," I whispered, the full weight of defeat crashing down. My job, my savings, potentially my professional reputation, all sacrificed in a failed attempt at justice. I thought of my grandfather, who died believing he was a failure because a larger entity stole his innovation. History was repeating itself, and I was powerless to stop it. "I need some air," I said, walking out of the conference room. On the building's rooftop garden, I called Jackie. "It's over," I told her, voice breaking. "They fired me. The deal is closing tomorrow. Nathan's going to get away with everything." "Come stay with me," she offered immediately. "Take some time to regroup." "What's the point? I'm 32 years old, unemployed, with no savings, and a reputation Nathan is systematically destroying. What company will hire me after this?" "This isn't you talking," Jackie said firmly. "The Sophia I know doesn't give up, especially when fighting for something she believes in." As we talked, my phone beeped with an incoming call from an unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it, but something instinct, desperation, fate, made me tell Jackie I'd call her back. "Is this Sophia Matthews?" asked a female voice when I answered. "Yes. Who's this?" "Amanda Reeves, junior counsel at MegaTech Industries. I'm calling about the ATLAS acquisition." My heart nearly stopped. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important right now," she replied. "What's important is that I've noticed some inconsistencies in the ownership documentation for the Atlas system. Specifically, the original architecture appears in company records under your name until approximately 8 months ago, when authorship suddenly changes." I gripped the phone tighter. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because our company is about to pay nearly $1 billion for this technology, and we need to be certain we're acquiring clean intellectual property." If there are ownership disputes, we need to know before closing. There are ownership disputes, I confirmed, my mind racing. I developed the core algorithm. I filed a patent application for the central innovation that makes Atlas valuable. A pause. I suspected as much, Miss. Matthews, I can't officially advise you, but if you have documentation supporting your claims, it would be in MegaTech's interest to review it before tomorrow's closing. After she hung up, I ran back to the conference room where Theo and Andrea were still strategizing. MegaTech's junior counsel just called me, I announced breathlessly. They've spotted inconsistencies in the Atlas documentation. They want to see our evidence before closing. Theo's eyes widened. This changes everything. If MegaTech has concerns about clean IP, they might delay the closing. Or they might just demand stronger indemnification from Tech Forward and proceed anyway, Andrea cautioned. Either way, we need to get them our documentation immediately, I insisted. We spent the next 4 hours compiling our most compelling evidence, my original notebooks, early code repositories, emails from colleagues acknowledging my role as Atlas's creator, and our patent application. But one crucial piece was missing. The internal documentation showing how Nathan had systematically altered project records to remove my contributions. Jake had shown me those logs, but I hadn't thought to copy them at the time. Those logs would be smoking gun evidence, Theo said. Without them, it's still possible for Tech Forward to claim all your work was done as a company employee following their direction. I made a decision that could have resulted in criminal charges. I need to get those logs. Sophia. No, Andrea warned. Unauthorized access to their systems after termination could be prosecuted as computer fraud. There might be another way, I said, pulling out my phone. Jake answered on the first ring. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Jake, I need the system logs showing Nathan altering the Atlas documentation. Can you get them? A pause. They'll know it was me. It logs show who accesses what. I know I'm asking a lot. I'll do it, he interrupted. What they're doing isn't right. Give me an hour. True to his word, Jake delivered. Using his administrative access, he extracted the logs showing Nathan's systematic alteration of Atlas documentation over the previous 8 months. Hundreds of changes erasing my contributions and inserting his name as the system architect. With this final piece of evidence, we compiled our package for MegaTech's legal team, sending it via secure digital delivery and courier to ensure it reached them before the closing meeting. That night, as I lay sleepless in Jackie's guest room, my phone lit up with a text from Jake, Nathan going crazy, MegaTech lawyers asking questions about Atlas authorship, closing delayed. I hugged the phone to my chest, tears of relief streaming down my face. It wasn't victory, not yet, but for the first time, Nathan's perfect plan had hit a serious obstacle. The next day brought silence. The scheduled closing came and went with no news. Jake reported that Nathan was locked in meetings with Tech Forward's legal team and executives. MegaTech representatives had requested additional documentation about Atlas's development history. What happens now? I asked Theo during our check-in call. Several possibilities, he replied. MegaTech might demand additional representations from Tech Forward about intellectual property. They might reduce their offer to account for potential litigation costs. Or they might back out entirely. What's the most likely outcome, in my experience? They'll proceed with the deal, but hold back a portion of the purchase price in escrow, pending resolution of any IP claims. So Nathan still wins, I said bitterly. Not necessarily. This is just the beginning. The real leverage comes from what we discovered during our review of the Atlas documentation. What do you mean? Theo's voice took on an intensity I hadn't heard before. While reviewing the technical specifications, I noticed something. The capabilities Nathan has been promising MegaTech go beyond what the current system can deliver. He's exaggerating Atlas's functionality to justify the high purchase price. I thought back to my final months on the project. I was planning enhancements to extend the predictive modeling, but those features aren't implemented yet. Exactly. Yet the sales materials describe them as existing capabilities. If MegaTech completes this acquisition based on those representations, and then discovers the system doesn't perform as promised, that's fraud, I finished. Potentially. And that gives us significant leverage beyond the patent issue. As the pieces fell into place, a plan began forming, one that would bring this situation to a head and force both Tech Forward and MegaTech to acknowledge the truth. The MegaTech deal might have been delayed, but it wasn't dead. Through Jake, we learned that a new closing meeting had been scheduled for the following Wednesday. 5 days to prepare our final move. Theo and I spent the weekend strategizing our approach to the rescheduled closing. The patent application was important, but we needed more immediate leverage to effect the deal in progress. A licensing demand letter, Theo proposed. We notify MegaTech that implementation of Atlas will require licensing the technology covered by your patent application. Will that work without an approved patent? I asked. It creates uncertainty and potential future liability. No acquirer wants that hanging over a $955 million purchase. We crafted the letter carefully, detailing the specific technological innovations covered by my patent application and their centrality to Atlas's functionality. The language was precise, the implications clear. Proceed with this acquisition, and you'll likely face licensing requirements or litigation. This is aggressive, Andrea warned when reviewing our draft. It could prompt Tech Forward to sue for interference with business relations. They won't, Theo replied confidently. Litigation would require discovery, depositions, document production, all exposing Nathan's actions to public scrutiny. They'll try to resolve this quietly. With the licensing letter finalized, we faced a crucial question: how to ensure it reached MegaTech's decision-makers before the closing. We could send it electronically, I suggested. Too easily ignored or filtered, Theo countered. We need physical delivery, timed for maximum impact. Jake provided the final piece of intelligence we needed. The closing meeting was scheduled for Wednesday at 10 in the morning in Tech Forward's Executive Conference Center. The MegaTech team would arrive at 9:30 for pre-meeting preparations. Wednesday dawned clear and cold. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit I'd worn to my original Tech Forward interview 5 years earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Remember the plan, Theo said, as we parked near Tech Forward headquarters. I handle the legal delivery. You wait until I text the all clear. But plans rarely survive contact with reality. As Theo approached the building entrance, I spotted Nathan through the glass lobby, heading toward the security desk. If he saw Theo, he might guess our intention and block delivery of the letter. I made a split-second decision. Change of plan, I said, grabbing the sealed envelope containing our licensing demand from Theo's hand. I'll do it. Before he could object, I was walking briskly toward a side entrance where I knew employees often slipped out for coffee breaks. The door required badge access, but luck was on my side. A group of marketing team members I recognized was exiting just as I approached. "Sophia!" one of them exclaimed in surprise. "I thought you left the company?" Just returning some paperwork, I replied with a casual smile, catching the door before it closed. Thanks. Inside, I moved purposefully toward the executive conference center on the 6th floor. My heart pounded, but I projected confidence head high, walking with authority. In a corporate setting, looking like you belong is half the battle. The elevator ride felt endless. With each floor, I rehearsed what I would say if challenged. But when the doors opened on 6, the hallway was mercifully empty. The executive conference center consisted of a reception area leading to several meeting rooms. Through glass walls, I could see a group of unfamiliar people in suits, the MegaTech team, reviewing documents in the largest conference room. At the reception desk sat Diane, an administrative assistant I'd chatted with at company events. "Sophia, what brings you up here?" she asked, surprise evident in her voice. "I have an urgent document for the MegaTech legal team," I said, holding up the sealed envelope. "It concerns the Atlas system they're acquiring." Diane hesitated. "I don't think I'm supposed to. I mean, I heard you were no longer with the company." "This isn't from Tech Forward," I explained truthfully. "It's from my patent attorney regarding intellectual property related to the acquisition. MegaTech's legal team will want to see this before they sign anything." Her eyes widened slightly at the words patent attorney. "I can give it to Marcus Jenkins," she offered, indicating a serious-looking man in the conference room. "He's their chief counsel." "That would be perfect." "Thank you, Diane." As she took the envelope and walked toward the conference room, I texted Theo. "Letter being delivered to MegaTech, chief counsel now." I should have left immediately. The plan was to deliver the letter and exit before Nathan or anyone from executive leadership arrived. But something made me linger, watching through the glass as Diane handed the envelope to Marcus Jenkins. He opened it with mild curiosity that transformed into focused attention as he read the contents. He said something to his colleagues, and several heads bent together over our letter. That's when the elevator doors opened, and Nathan emerged, accompanied by Tech Forward's CEO and their legal team. Nathan spotted me instantly, his face flushed with anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, striding toward me. "This is private property. You're trespassing." "I was just leaving," I replied calmly. "Security," Nathan called to the uniformed guard at the end of the hallway. "This former employee needs to be escorted from the building immediately." The security guard approached uncertainly. "Miss Matthews? I thought you left the company last week." "She did," Nathan snapped. "And now she's trespassing. Remove her." "Actually," came a new voice, "I'd like her to stay." Marcus Jenkins had emerged from the conference room, our letter in his hand. "Miss Matthews, I'm Marcus Jenkins, Chief Counsel for MegaTech. I've just been reading this very interesting document regarding patent claims to core Atlas technology." Nathan's face went from angry red to ashen in seconds. "Whatever she's told you is a desperate fabrication." Sophia was a minor contributor to Atlas who's become fixated on claiming undue credit. "That's not what the documentation suggests," Jenkins replied coolly. "In fact, we've been reviewing evidence indicating Miss Matthews was the primary architect of the system we're acquiring today." Tech Forward's CEO, Thomas Blackwell, looked between Nathan and me with growing concern. "What is this about, Nathan?" Before Nathan could respond, the elevator opened again, and Theo stepped out, carrying a briefcase. Perfect timing. "Theo Lewis, patent attorney, representing Sophia Matthews," he announced, offering business cards to Jenkins and Blackwell. "I see you've received our licensing demand letter." "This is ridiculous," Nathan sputtered. "She signed an employment agreement. Everything she created belongs to Tech Forward." "Ordinarily, yes," Theo agreed pleasantly. But there are fascinating exceptions when an employee can document independent conception prior to company resource utilization, particularly when there's evidence of systematic attempt to obscure original authorship. Jenkins turned to Blackwell. We need to pause the closing proceedings. My team requires time to evaluate these new intellectual property concerns. This is a delay tactic, nothing more, Nathan insisted. We have a signed agreement. With material disclosures that now appear questionable, Jenkins countered, particularly concerning the system's actual capabilities versus what's been represented. Nathan's eyes darted to me. I met his gaze steadily, letting him see that I knew about his exaggerated claims to MegaTech. Perhaps we should all sit down, Blackwell suggested, gesturing toward an empty conference room. Clear the air, before proceeding. What followed was the most remarkable 3 hours of my professional life. In that conference room, with attorneys from both companies present, the full story unfolded. Theo methodically presented my documentation, establishing my role as Atlas's creator. Jake's logs revealed Nathan's systematic effort to erase my contributions. Most damaging to Nathan were the technical specifications I had written, contrasted with his inflated promises to MegaTech about capabilities not yet implemented. You claimed the system could predict supply chain disruptions with 87% accuracy across 6 continents, Jenkins stated, reviewing the sales materials. Can it actually do that? Nathan shifted uncomfortably. The underlying architecture supports that capability. That wasn't my question, Jenkins pressed. Can it do that now, as currently implemented? When Nathan hesitated, I answered, the current system achieves that accuracy in North America and Europe. Expansion to other continents would require additional data integration and algorithm refinement work I was planning before being removed from the project. As the hours passed, Nathan's position deteriorated from defiant to defensive to desperate. The evidence was too comprehensive, the contradictions in his claims too apparent. Finally, Jenkins addressed Blackwell directly. We still want Atlas. It's a valuable system, but not under the current terms, and not with Mr. Parker leading the integration. Nathan jumped to his feet. You can't cut me out. This deal was my— Your what, Nathan? Blackwell interrupted coldly. Your creation? Your achievement? It appears that's precisely what it wasn't. The most surprising revelation came from MegaTech's CEO, who joined the meeting via video conference in the final hour. Our interest in acquiring Atlas was never just about the current system, she explained. We were equally interested in the innovative mind behind it, the person who could continue evolving this technology for MegaTech's future needs. We specifically requested that the inventor join our team as part of the acquisition. We were told that person was Nathan Parker. All eyes turned to me. Miss Matthews, she continued, based on what we've learned today, you are the innovator we've been seeking. Whatever resolution is reached regarding Atlas, MegaTech would like to discuss bringing you on as our Chief Innovation Officer for Logistics Technology. In that moment, I glimpsed Nathan's true punishment. Not just the loss of credit or compensation, but witnessing the position he had coveted, the leadership role, the prestige, the future he had tried to steal being offered to me instead. As the meeting concluded, Jenkins pulled me aside. This isn't over, he warned. There will be complicated negotiations to resolve the patent claims, compensation, and terms of the acquisition. But your position is strong. I nodded, emotionally exhausted but vindicated. What happens now? Now, he said with a slight smile, Nathan Parker has some explaining to do to his board, and you have a job offer to consider. As I left Tech Forward headquarters that day, Walking past the security desk where I had once proudly displayed my employee badge, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope, not just for compensation or recognition, but for a future where my work would truly be my legacy. The week following the confrontation passed in a blur of meetings, negotiations, and legal discussions. TechForward's board of directors launched an internal investigation, interviewing employees about Atlas's development history and Nathan's actions. Jake emerged as a key witness, providing detailed documentation of how project records had been altered. Other team members, freed from fear of retaliation, confirmed my role as Atlas's primary architect. 10 days after our dramatic interruption of the closing meeting, I sat in Andrea's office with Theo as TechForward's attorneys presented their settlement offer. They're proposing $35 million for your patent claims, plus 3% ongoing royalties from Atlas implementations, Andrea summarized. In exchange, TechForward retains ownership of the existing system, while acknowledging you as the principal inventor. Is it fair? I asked, still struggling to process the figure $35 million. It's on the low end of what we might get through litigation, Theo replied. But litigation would take years, with no guaranteed outcome. And MegaTech? I asked. They've adjusted their acquisition terms with TechForward. They're proceeding with the purchase at a reduced price of $820 million, with separate agreements regarding your involvement. I took a deep breath. What happened to Nathan? Andrea and Theo exchanged glances. He's been placed on administrative leave pending the board's final decision, Andrea said. Given the evidence, termination seems likely, possibly with legal consequences for fraudulent representations to MegaTech. The settlement documents required my signature in multiple places. As I prepared to sign, I remembered my grandfather and his lost invention. What would he think of this moment? $35 million was life-changing money, but this had never been just about compensation. Before I sign, I said, I want one additional condition. 3 weeks later, I stood before TechForward's engineering department, Nathan conspicuously absent. The company's new CTO, Lisa Winters, my former supervisor, who had initially dismissed my idea, introduced me. As part of our settlement agreement with Sophia Matthews, I'm pleased to announce the establishment of the Matthews Innovation Fund, she announced. This internal program will provide resources and protection for employee inventions, ensuring proper attribution and compensation for breakthrough technologies developed here. The irony wasn't lost on me. The company that had allowed my work to be stolen was now implementing policies to prevent it from happening to others, policies bearing my name. After the presentation, Lisa approached me privately. I owe you an apology, she said. I knew what Nathan was doing, but I was too afraid for my own position to speak up. Fear is a powerful silencer, I replied. That's why the Innovation Fund includes independent oversight and whistleblower protections. MegaTech honored their offer, creating a position for me as Chief Innovation Officer for Logistics Technology. My first assignment: expanding Atlas's capabilities to deliver on the promises Nathan had prematurely made. I insisted on bringing Jake with me, promoting him to head of technical infrastructure with a substantial salary increase. You risked everything to help me, I told him, when he protested that he wasn't qualified. I need people I can trust. 6 months after the settlement, I received word that Nathan had left the industry entirely. According to former colleagues, no technology company would touch him, his reputation, permanently tarnished by the scandal detailed in industry publications. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. The justice I had sought wasn't about destroying Nathan, but about reclaiming what was rightfully mine and ensuring such theft couldn't happen easily again. The Matthews Innovation Fund expanded beyond tech forward, becoming an industry initiative supporting inventors across multiple companies. I dedicated a portion of my settlement to creating educational programs about intellectual property protection for women in technology. During one such workshop, at a national engineering conference, I met Jessica Ortiz, a brilliant young programmer facing a situation disturbingly similar to mine. Her supervisor was gradually taking credit for her machine learning breakthrough. "Document everything," I advised her afterward. "Save records outside company systems. Consider provisional patents for novel aspects." "That's so much work on top of actual development," she sighed. "Is it really necessary?" I showed her a picture on my phone, my grandfather Joseph in his workshop, tinkering with the carburetor design that was stolen from him. My grandfather taught me that bringing ideas into the world is only half the job. Protecting them is equally important. "Did I ever get justice?" Jessica asked. "No," I admitted. "But his experience protected me, and now mine can protect you." She left our meeting with renewed determination and a referral to Theo, who had started a practice specializing in helping engineers and developers protect their innovations. As for the $35 million, after taxes and legal fees, I invested most of it conservatively. I bought a comfortable but modest house, established college funds for Jackie's children, and created a foundation supporting STEM education for girls. The real wealth came from what couldn't be quantified: ownership of my work, recognition of my contribution, and the opportunity to continue developing technologies without fear of theft. 1 year to the day after the confrontation in Tech Forward's conference room, I received an email from Andrea containing a PDF attachment. "Congratulations," the message read. "It's official." The attachment was my approved patent certificate, formally recognizing me as the inventor of the adaptive learning protocol at Atlas's core. I printed it and framed it alongside my grandfather's photo. That night, I hosted a small celebration at my new home. Jackie and her family, Jake, Theo, and a few trusted colleagues gathered to mark the occasion. "A toast," Theo proposed, raising his glass, "to Sophia Matthews, who reminded us all that brilliance without protection is vulnerability, but brilliance with protection is unstoppable." Later, as guests departed, I found myself alone with Theo on the patio. Our professional relationship had gradually evolved into friendship, and recently, something more. "What will you create next?" he asked, genuinely curious in the way that had drawn me to him from our first meeting. "I'm thinking about supply chain systems for disaster response," I replied, "using Atlas architecture to optimize emergency resource distribution." "Not focused on profit?" he asked. "Profit will follow purpose," I said, a lesson the past year had taught me. Creating something meaningful is what matters. The money and recognition are secondary. He smiled, and properly protected, of course. "Always," I agreed, raising my glass to his. That's the most important lesson in all of this. Innovation without protection is charity to those who would exploit it. True innovation requires both brilliance and business savvy. Looking back on my journey from overlooked logistics specialist to chief innovation officer with my name on a groundbreaking patent, I realized the most valuable thing I'd gained wasn't the settlement money or the prestigious position. It was the knowledge that I had fought for what was mine and won not through luck or rescue, but through preparation, persistence, and the courage to stand up when everything seemed lost. My grandfather never got his justice, but his legacy lived on in what he taught me. And now, through the Matthews Innovation Fund and my advocacy work, That legacy would extend to future generations of creators fighting to protect what they build. In the end, Nathan didn't steal my system. He tried and failed because I refused to be erased. The $955 million deal happened, but with my name properly attached to the innovation that made it valuable. The true victory wasn't in the money, but in the recognition that ideas, properly protected, are the most valuable currency in the modern world. Have you ever had your work or ideas taken without credit? What steps do you take to protect your innovations, big or small? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that standing up for yourself is worth it, even when the odds seem impossible. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope it inspires you to protect what you create with the same passion you bring to creating it.